Tim, nice to talk to you. It's a great opportunity to see you. So you had a busy day.
Yeah.
So it's town hall meetings and you're in Eastern Ontario primarily. Can you give us a feel of what you're hearing on the street?
People are concerned about where this province is heading. I mean, we all love Ontario. We've known an Ontario that's always been a leader, but it seems like we've lost our way. We're not getting the high quality jobs that we need. We're paying more and more to government, but we're getting a bigger deficit, and we're not seeing the improvements on the front line. At the same time, I see a lot of hope and optimism out there that when Ontarians have dared to dream big things in the past and they've looked to the future, we've overcome challenges. So I feel excited. There's optimism, a sense that we can do better. Just because Dalton McGuinty's, the best Dalton McGuinty can do doesn't mean it's the best Ontario can do.
Right.
I think better days are ahead of us.
So the real message, and we're going back to, I guess, the early 90s when the message was, it's the economy, stupid. Is that what we're still
Bill
hearing?
Clinton fan,
Are we still hearing that on the street, everywhere in Ontario?
Whether I'm here in Cobourg, and I suspect in Belleville and Ottawa later today, and I heard it in Barrie yesterday, it is jobs in the economy.
Right.
That it is hard to find a good job. A lot of people who are underemployed. Parents worrying about their kids if they're going to get a good job. And we've always known a province where the next generation does better than the one before it. And a lot of people are worried that we're off that course.
Well, that is something that's been raised. I know that you hear that in the media. This is the first generation of kids who are going to school, going to university right now that may end up graduating, obviously with huger debt, but they may in fact have a future that may not be as bright. And what do you think the provincial government can do then to create an environment that's conducive to job growth? I mean, because governments don't create jobs, as you said in your town hall earlier. They create an environment that's conducive to job growth. Is there a path laid out for the Conservatives in this province?
Well, there is, and I'll tell you a bit about our plan. And Rob Milligan's been played a key role in talking about that, particularly how it impacts small town and rural Ontario. But some of the highlights that I addressed today on what a PC job plan would look like. First of all, making sure we get our books in balance. Nobody's investing in Greece these days. Nobody's creating jobs there, so we don't want to be the Greece of Canada. Get our spending under control. Number two, lower the costs of doing business. That means lowering taxes on businesses and entrepreneurs, and also getting our energy rates under control. Energy should be an economic fundamental. Reliable and affordable energy is part of our plan, not the expensive experiments happening today. Third, I think we should do a lot more in the skilled trades, creating opportunities for people who want to get into professions as carpenters, plumbers, electricians. Our system is stuck in the 70s. These are good jobs. We have a plan to create 200,000 more. And fourth and finally, it's just changing the attitude of government to be pro-jobs, pro-growth.
Right.
When I talk to business owners, workers, managers, they say, like, anytime that they try to do something, create a job or expand a business, it's almost like there's an army of bureaucrats in their way telling them what they can't do. Let's get the bureaucrats out of the way behind business to help us create jobs again.
Right. Well, one of the things you talk about a lot, and all the governments do, is debt. And one of the things that I find interesting is that we don't have a program in university or in high school, for that matter, to teach people about debt. I mean, we know Ontarians have huge personal debt loads, as big as probably not as big as the government, but by a ratio. And is there a program you think that could be implemented maybe to educate people about debt, and maybe before they get into debt?
I do. In fact, I've been suggesting that should be a stronger part of our high school curriculum for some time, because when young men and women graduate, they're hit with immediately credit card companies that want to get them hooked up to the 19-20% interest rates. I mean, how do you do a car loan? What's a mortgage mean? And the importance of debt, because everybody likes to hear about good programs that might sound nice, but we also have to understand you got to pay for those things. You can't borrow more and more money.
Right.
You can't run a house that way or business that way, and you can't run government that way.
Right. Well, one of the things that Ontarians experienced a few years ago, when this was under the previous government, was what I like to call economic time bombs. And that's where you implement programs where you say, oh, well, this is going to come into effect 5, 6, 7 years down the road. And we know a lot of municipalities under previous regimes spent a lot of money away because they didn't have a certain debt level. And then a few years later, when that time bomb went off, now all of a sudden they had a huge impact on their municipal governments, and money that they essentially blew now was money that they needed, and they should have saved that money. Are we going to see any of that? Are we going to see some of these economic time bombs, or are we looking at balancing our books in what I would consider a more prudent fashion, which is looking at what your costs are right now and then trying to diminish those costs as time went on?
Exactly. We need to make fundamental changes to the way the government delivers services. A couple of things come to mind. First, I think you got to separate the must-haves from the like-to-haves.
Right.
You can't be all things to all people, otherwise you get into a $30 billion deficit. Secondly, I think when it comes to government services and programs, you got to decide, should the government be delivering that program, or should they play a regulatory role or support it? Some good, healthy competition and delivery of services will actually get you the best price at the lowest cost.
Right.
For example, on maintenance of government buildings and vehicles. I mean, if it's already done by a business, why would you have a government union doing that when you could actually have a bid out between the government union, the private sector union, the private sector small business, and not-for-profit, who can actually deliver a service at the best price? And then once you get back into balance, we can't forget we've got to pay down the debt as well. It is right now the third biggest expenditure in all of government. So before you pay for police, for highways, you're paying interest on money already borrowed.
Absolutely.
And when interest rates go up, and you know they will, it'll be even more of a challenge.
Well,
Last question, guys. We have to run.
especially with the economic downturn, right? We're looking at Moody's with the downgrade and what have you. So
Yeah.
we're going to see interest rates go up. That's a given. What plan do you have then to show these bond rating agencies that Ontario is still a viable investment for folks abroad and for Ontarians?
Rob Milligan and I have actually put together a plan on how to balance books. We gave it to the Premier. I sat down with him on November the 8th and presented it to him. I suggested he put this into place because I was worried about the downgrade. Sadly, the Premier ignored my suggestions and we got the downgrade. What did it include? A public sector pay freeze for all of us in the public sector for at least 2 years. That saves you $2 billion there. Arbitration reform. Getting out of the corporate welfare business of where you're taxing 100 businesses to give one a grant because they went to the right fundraiser. Right. And so the things I talked about earlier of going through every penny, deciding what is actually a core service and what we no longer need or can't afford.
Right.
And the other side of that coin, you can't cut your way to prosperity. You also have to have a growth plan, and that's what Rob and I were talking about today at the town hall, how to get our economy firing on all cylinders to get more people working again.
Right. Well, I want to thank you for coming out, and I want to thank you for your time.
Thanks for being here today.
Very
Great to be
exciting.
back in Cobourg.